Good morning, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I can't see everybody yet, but I see a couple of you, a few of you. The road to freedom. This morning, or this week, I've communed with Dr. Stuart Grayson, who was our second pastor here. And I had an opportunity of meeting Dr. Grayson many years ago and having a discussion with him at a Silmar. And I had read one of his books, and I have listened to now many of his presentations. And he was a deep thinker. I can understand why some of our ministers and people here really liked him. He came after Dr. Barker. As I have observed both of their styles, Barker would be a little bit more off the cuff, deep in the sense that he could just say what he needed to say succinctly, with a certain spontaneity. Dr. Grayson, in contrast, was very detailed and I would say probably more scholarly. The book that he had written that I read well over 20 years ago was a deeper type of book than most of us are used to reading when we come into the teaching. So I've had some fun with him. It was a challenge, and I thought, well, how can I take this series of writings and maybe give you a highlight of what it is that he was teaching. And The Science of Freedom was a compilation of different things he wrote. So I want to go through some of it with you today. I did my best to condense some of it and keep the best of it for you. So he started out, and most of this is going to be his words with some of my additions and clarifications in some cases, and some cases where I simply had to trim it down. So what happens to us in our study, in our work, in mind, is that we're always doing a clarification, or there's a clarifying process that's going on for us as we're in this teaching. And that process enables us to be able to perceive life and ourselves in a better way, in a way that we say is the way of intelligence. Everyone, he said, everyone is in need of healing. There is no one human being, nobody who is not in need of healing of some kind every single day of his or her life. The healing is not always a need for something big or something dramatic, say a major disease or something like that. It might have nothing to do with a major dysfunction or disorder, though it could include that. Maybe, someone we know is dealing with, a major illness. The need for healing can be in small or big, it doesn't matter. And he says it has to do with the fact that all of us are in change all the time. And we talk a lot about that here. You know that. You hear me talk about it quite frequently. But he thought of it as a really big thing because we have a tendency to have our life, we think it's going this way, but he's, what we really know is life is always changing. So we need to get with it. and we have to have our inner, and to have our life go forward so we can accept change, we need to get with all the inner and outer changes in a positive way so we can feel good about life. There's no problem, for example, he thought, in being an older person, except many of the older folks have got many years and patterns and ideas that sometimes get in our way. And this is not always true, though. I remember a time I was thinking, as I was preparing this talk this week, that my brother, I thought, was older than my father. And I'll explain that later. Older in the sense he just was caught up in what used to be 15, 20 years ago. And my father had the capacity of really being in the day that he was in. So you can figure that out if you know any folks like that. But in any event, with Dr. Grayson, healing is always needed. To be healthy in your mind and body, we want to truly learn to let go of old patterns. rigid ideas of every kind, old thoughts, old concepts, everything you thought to be true, and all of the stuff that we talk about every single week. We identify every Thursday in our meetings, our Zoom meetings with Louise Hay, all our limiting beliefs. Those are the things that get in our way. There's a person on the call I can see today. Okay, she may be a little bit older than I am, right? But I think of her, because I know her and the way she thinks, I think of her almost like she's a younger sister. Because I'm very fond of her. And this lady, though probably a few years older than me, is absolutely full of life and wonder. Most people, Dr. Grayson said, or thought that day when he was expressing this idea, are half alive. Half alive for the most part, or maybe not even that. Their beliefs have been playing out for years and years, and they're totally set in their ways. And they're like in stone. They're not able to see anything new or see things in a new way. And he said that would be the masses, because the masses, they're living in a world of reaction, not necessarily focused on the now. Most of them are focused on what happened to them, and they're focused on fear, and they're focused on getting by and survival. For this group who are focused in the past, yesterday did not end last night. For this group, most of their tomorrows and the weeks ahead will be a projection of the past. And it'll be what happened to them and what happened to them, and it'll be what happened to them back when they were a child, or when their marriage ended, and they will frame their experience in light of the hurts and the things, and the good things too. But that person is a person who's not really of today, and it's very sad to a lot of us, our past ministers, myself included, when people can't be in the present, because in the present there's every possibility in the world. So Dr. Grayson thought, these folks are somewhat lost. Their whole frame of reference points them to what is gone, or what used to be. The church they used to have, the family life they used to have, the jobs, the friendships they used to have. And if you're in this group, sadly, and you're really wanting to have outer change, you want to have newness and freshness, well, for many people, all of that excitement and that newness and freshness isn't there anymore. I would think anybody tuning into this broadcast today, and I know there'll be several hundred that will watch it throughout the week, I'm thinking most of you tuning into a religious science center, a spiritual center, I'm thinking most of you are past that, or at least you're considering change. You'd have to be considering change to even be bothered tuning into these types of broadcasts, this type of community. So that's good. If you're here, it would suggest to me you have a divine appointment and you have some interest in positive change and creating happiness for yourself and joy. But the point Dr. Grayson was making here was, it's not enough to just be here, though. It's not enough just to sit here. But I would add to what he said that it's a very, very good start, because you could be doing it just like not considering anything new at all. Dr. Barker had lessons. He preceded Dr. Grayson, and you've heard me share Dr. Barker's wisdom before. Dr. Barker had lessons on getting out of hell, and you might recall he was referring to the people who maintain that consciousness of always seeing problems and always saying what's wrong and talking about problems and talking about the past. And that's like if you're on an old loop, an old tape, and you're just go round and round and round with what it used to be like. And say there's a grievance, someone has hurt you, you've suffered some losses, and most of us who've lived life for any length of time have gone through changes and experienced loss and some pain. It seems to be part of life's experience. And Dr. Barker said that's hell, because we're coming from a wounded place, and sometimes we're having a very difficult time getting past the past. Moving forward to Dr. Grayson, who came after Dr. Barker. Dr. Grayson commented also about that group who won't participate in life, saying that they were a bit detached and they've stopped thinking about their ability, their super ability, I would say today, to manifest something new, something different, and something great. They'll always say to you, if you ask them, I'm fine. But inwardly, there's a boredom, a resignation, he thought, as though fate had happened and life had passed them by. And there's an acceptance sometimes, that this is all there is. You can remember some of you, Peggy Lee, is this all there is? And that's the reality for a lot of people. So here we are in this call, and we're in the 2020s now. And I'm here to say, all of you, each of you who are here, you're here to understand and hear the message of Ernest Holmes, that there's power and there's goodness, and you were meant to shine and to express life. But that's not the training of the world. The training of the world is almost the opposite. Fit in, get along, So if you're in a teaching like this, you're going against the grain already, because you're here and you're waking up, you're getting excited about your life, and you're realizing you're one with the one, you're an individualization of God life, and everything inside of you, you begin to ignite if you stay plugged into this teaching. And when I was putting the Grayson material together, and he's talking about self-expression, some reason I went back to the 1980s, and I remember the Material Girl, Madonna, and I remember one line in a song, express yourself, right? Now, I don't always go to her for sage advice, but it really is important. We're here as unique individuals and to learn how to express ourselves and get excited about ourselves, and not to die with the music still inside of us. And so many people, as Grayson was saying, all through his material are simply just, they're caught up in past thoughts and past thinking, and they're not challenging themselves to have happiness and joy. If you're living that way, and it's very easy to do it, it's very easy to let the joy slip away. There's a lot of people who wonder what happened. They don't know how their marriage ended. They don't know how these things happened to them. They just can't seem to figure it out. And he suggested there's an underlying exasperation, a sadness in many people. And then comes, for many also, people get a little bit jaded and down on life. And I've observed that as I've worked with the elderly sometimes, but not everybody. See, there's some elderly people I know that are more like children than I am, or than most of us are. And I don't mean children like they're not acting intelligently, but there's some of them that really have joy, right? But for most, a lot, as Grayson was suggesting, there's an unhappiness or not an understanding of how life has changed. It's as though it has passed them by, or that's how it seems. And he said that's how it works for the people who have not learned the secrets of living or the secrets of his teaching. If we go back to his time and some of his lessons, he was commenting in one of his lessons, the widespread use of antidepressants as an example because of the depression that exists in the United States. And he said people are trying to level out, they're looking for balance. And he went on to comment, some people look for help through the medical world and it works for some. Other people are looking for a way to feel better about themselves through alcohol and every kind of drug. And people do all kinds of things also that are very negative on their bodies and destructive. And he thought that, there's true legitimate need for medicine. He said, but there's, it's turned into a $20 billion industry. And he said a lot of things with a lot of people have to do with an inner malaise or an inner boredom. And he thought our teaching could help everybody, really. So if you made it into this broadcast, and basically I'm going to give you some of Dr. Grayson's realizations, who can help you and help me no matter what's going on, no matter if I'm dealing with an illness or if I'm dealing with an emotional problem or if I'm dealing with whatever life has presented. You will learn through these broadcasts and our lessons. Our focus is always on turning around these conditions so that your light can shine. I know, I've listened to people here for 4 or 5 years that everybody's longing for positive change. And there's some of you that are ready to embrace this adventure, and you want to learn about the power you possess, and you're ready for something wonderful and new to happen. And I promise you, if you stay with it means stay plugged in, look for an opportunity to stay plugged in. If you stay with it and stay the course, we'll show you how to do it and how to deal with change, and more than that, how to embrace change in a positive way. So once again, over the years, the students that somehow or another stay connected and stay plugged in seem to be the ones that move through life and wind up in a happier place, because we all forget that there's this power that's a part of us that we're one with. And we have this built-in forgetter. So to counteract that built-in forgetting, we want to do things that will cause us to remember and practice. So we want to have this kind of transformational life, where moment by moment and hour by hour, day by day, we refuse to go there, which is to the negative story, to that place he called of decay. Because wherever we go into somebody done me wrong and we ruminate over any of that, he stated we are going to that place of decay, where our thoughts are about the past, where you might language what I've been through, where I've been, what's been done. And he said the answer always is to refuse to go there. Just when you find yourself doing it, stop. And if you find yourself talking about other people in a negative way, stop. In our personal life, in all of our endeavors, wherever we find ourselves doing that, we stop. And as we think back a little bit, because sometimes we do, about the people that have come before us, be they our parents, grandparents, even in the centers of the church, of all the people that have been here before, that gave what they gave to us, we know on some level that we're the offspring of that. We know on some level that we must move past them and what they knew. And even though sometimes you would think they knew more, the fact of the matter is you're here and each of you are a new expression. Our center is a new expression. We're facing new kind of challenges in a digital age with a digital virtual community. Here at the center, we need to go forward. There have been great teachers here. I will promise you that. I have been communing with them for several years, and I learn from them every week still, because I'm a student always. And as we consider all that our parents have taught us, or the teachers before us, our families, everything we've all been through and taught, we look forward still to something that is a departure from the past. Now, that was such a beautiful remark that Mr. Grayson said. We look forward always to something that is a departure from the past. Very important line. I don't look to the past. I look forward always to something that is a departure from the past. This is life which is longing for itself, and it wants to express itself through you, through me, into the tomorrows. So Grayson was a teacher, Dr. Grayson, to Louise Hay, and she had a famous line, which I'm sure in some part came from him. Never, 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 ever criticize yourself or compare yourself to anyone. Learn, if you can, to develop the healing dialogue where you approve of yourself. No one knows your value truly. Metaphysicians do. I know that everyone is one with the one. And When we say namaste, we acknowledge the value in others, the spiritual value. But in terms of the world, no one knows your struggles and what you've been through. It's very important that you begin the process of self-acceptance and self-approval. Release any negativity that you have within you that comes up for yourself, where you're critical of yourself or others. Just say stop and release it. Tell yourself the truth about you. I love, accept, and approve of you, meaning yourself, right? And if you have conflicts with others, immediately, as soon as you go there, find the way to release it and understand that they're doing the best they can. Now, today in this broadcast, there's all the people on the Zoom call, and those of you right now on Facebook and on Instagram and YouTube, join in with us on the Zoom, because after every presentation, we have a time for sharing. You can listen or you can share. And we have a community time after our service, about 5 minutes later, where we have another opportunity for people to share in our broadcasts, in our community. Most of the people signing into these broadcasts have arrived at a point in time in their life where they realize their time right now, they get a sense, my time is precious. And this is not a dress rehearsal. This is later than we think, and we really don't have time. We're doing important work personally, and we don't want to come down. We don't want to go down, and we don't want to go to the past and ruminate on old ideas. Most of us have a desire to live in happiness and in joy. And most of us have no desire to be living in fear and in judgment. Soon enough, Dr. Grayson stated profoundly one day that we will depart from this consciousness and move on to another journey, to something greater, he thought, and better. So while we're here, what we're teaching and what we want to be awake in and experiencing daily and hour by hour, hopefully, is joy, peace, joy. In this teaching, we will remind you how everything in some way is an action of your thoughts. This lesson this morning will help develop some ideas for you. So let's take it a little bit deeper by knowing, and I'm speaking now for all of us, I am an integral part of the one universe. I do not live in an outmoded past. I do not live in a mere promising present. I do not live in just a hopeful future. I am an empowerment person. I am an empowered person, a today person, living in the here and the now of my enlightened consciousness. I choose life. And no person, place, or situation can inhibit my forward movement. I recognize myself as the full intelligence of spirit in action. I always have new creative ideas. New and creative ideas, I always have them. I today, here and now, release negative ideas, thoughts, and opinions that are operating in me. And the power of this affirmation, this affirmative prayer, acts as a spiritual treatment that eliminates their expression in me and in my world. I rejoice in the newness of being created by this spiritual knowing, and I am happy, joyous, and free. So we move on with this great lesson. And again, if you're watching on any of the platforms, send us a text and you can join in the discussion on Zoom. It's always a more intimate experience. And today, once again, we're talking about a science of freedom. And that's what our work is really all about, is for us to evolve in freedom. And of course, this science means the ability to study and observe laws, experiment with them, and prove it to yourself. Many people and many philosophies and religions feel that there can't be any such science. Nothing towards freedom. Well, we teach that there is indeed a science of freedom, and that you are a self. Think of yourself as a personal identity. You have an identity. You know it yourself. You know yourself as a person, as an individual, as an identity. Now, when we can begin to think about our spiritual work we realize that there is some kind of unitary field. That's what Deepak Chopra called it. There's a unitary field, there's a oneness, a source, an energy. There's this thing, this God, if you want to call it God, that we exist in. We don't know how that is so. No one in the world can ever explain that adequately. But from it, we begin to think. And we understand our connection, and we know there's a presence and a force. Oneness is a theme of life. And yet, when we live in our day-to-day living, it's a relative experience, right? We see all this stuff, right? It's chaos and problems, and it's very easy for that concept of oneness to disappear if we let it. Raymond Barker always talked about it's really easy being spiritual here on a Sunday morning. The challenge is maintaining that spiritual sense, that connection, an hour or two after you've left. But it's a practice. You know, some of us have been doing it for many, many years. Maybe not perfectly, but we stay close. We stay close to the teaching. And it pays huge dividends. Dr. Grayson said, it's simple. Louise would say it's all very simple. I remember being involved myself in a daily course. I was probably in my late 20s, early 20s, mid-20s. For a full year, we were contemplating the idea of oneness. And there was a daily lesson, and we met every Saturday, and we discussed what came up for us during that week. And each of us could see how quickly, even though we thought we were advanced students, that we went into this judgment during the week and separation. And it seemed like it was a lot to accomplish to get ourselves in alignment with these ideas. In this teaching, for example, if you stay plugged in to our Thursday class, which is all about self-esteem using Ernest Holmes and Louise Hay, if you get in the habit of paying attention to your conversation and canceling the negatives and learning affirmative prayer, if you do any of this, your life can dramatically improve. But there needs to be a practice. It's an active practice. It's as though everything inside of you wants to forget how great you are. All the training inside of you really wants to dim it down, you know, and there's a part of you that really wants to express. I can promise you that. Some people will say the word ego stands easing God out, or other people will say ego is out to get you. And I would say nobody's out to get anybody. There's nothing outside of you, no thing that's trying to get you. But we forget, and we come here to remember. We have a lot of ideas circulate in our heads, old tapes, old beliefs, belief systems. Shirley would call them blind spots. We teach here that there must be a spiritual principle in operation in the universe, because we humans are in action in consciousness. We come out of it, right? There's a lineage of people that came before me and every one of us. Each of us have evolved out of life, and each of us are still evolving. We are part of this consciousness, and we're experiencing this energy to varying degrees. Everybody listening to our broadcast today. Some of us are more aware of our connection than others, but we all share attributes of it. We have the ability to think new ideas, really. You know, you definitely can transcend your past. You can be one of these people who truly know that yesterday ended last night. And really you can know that you're in a new day with new power and power that you can use. Many, if not most, don't think new ideas. But we can. If you're hearing this teaching, we know that we can stop that train of negativity and we can begin anew and think new thoughts. We have the ability to do that. We have the ability to reason, to experience a logical action of thought. Now, when we work with these ideas and we learn how to do affirmative prayer, and affirmative prayer is one of the most powerful things if you really take the time to learn how to do it. And we do teach it. Any of our ministers can teach it to you. We do classes on it. Ultimately, though it's a prayer you learn to do for yourself, you might need some instruction to get started. When we're doing our spiritual work, we're always doing our spiritual work on ourselves. That's what we're doing. We're not doing it on anyone else but ourselves. When we're willing to undertake that work, the work is to see the good and to know the good and act that way as though the good is here, to see the good and the perfect person. Now, there's lots of people you encounter and I encounter where you don't see it because they're giving you a lot of problems. But our job ultimately is to see the good and have the understanding that everyone is really doing the best they can, even when they're, acting pretty miserable. And ourselves included, right? We're not always showing up the way we would like to, and we can't get down on ourselves. We must find the way to stop the criticism and learn to affirm and love and like ourselves and practice self-acceptance and self-approval. But when we keep working with it, and we have the willingness to think and change our leading thoughts from what's wrong, what's missing, what's wrong with this person, what's wrong with this place, if we can step out of that, and if we stay steadfast about focusing on what's good, there's going to be a quickening inside of you, and you're going to have more joy and appreciation. Life, as we all know, is a relatively brief experience. And most of us want to live in greater freedom and joy. We want to love ourselves and calm ourselves down from all that chatter. We want to center ourselves and start realizing and praising all the people in our lives and ourselves too. We want to come from a place of appreciation. Dr. Grayson said people are far, far from perfect, and all of us are evolving, every last one of us. So let us be resolved once more to never, never criticize ourselves and others. Everybody misses the mark, makes mistakes while they're learning. And so what? Life moves forward, and we're grateful to know what we know. The suggestion, going back to Christian times, is love your brother as yourself, because, in fact, everybody's a part of everybody else. As we use this science in freedom, we increasingly let go of the blame game. We let go of the need to be right and the need to find fault. And we let go of all of our positions of who is right and who is wrong. If our lives are going to come up to a higher place, those are not conversations we really want to be a part of. We notice and we stop wherever we are and find ourselves in those discussions. We intend to rid this negativity, or what Dr. Holmes said, this negation from us as soon as we notice that we're there. So it's a practice. You find yourself there, you stop. You say, I release the need for this, and you go towards what is true. Do the best you can was the suggestion in this particular piece of Dr. Grayson's. Do the best you can, and do that the next day also, and the next day. Keep doing your best and keep taking the high road. And it doesn't matter what people are thinking or saying. You do your best and keep taking the high road and know that people are doing the best they can. And when you find yourself making mistakes, you begin gently and lovingly making the corrections within your thinking. When others are not living up to your expectations, and they won't, here's a real opportunity to remember, however they are showing up, they're doing the best they can, and judging them will not help. And also that we're never walking in another person's experience, and they don't really know all the challenges they don't know the challenges you're facing any more than you know the challenges that they are. So we drop the negative chatter, and we drop the idea of what's wrong and what's missing. So today happens to be a week of gratitude and thanksgiving, and let us all be resolved to stop. Yes, stop the judgment of ourselves and others. Stop being so rough on yourself. Some of you are doing so much good in the world and in yourself, and then you'll berate yourself and you'll feel like whatever you're doing still isn't enough. Give yourself a pass, give yourself some praise, in gratitude and thanksgiving for all the gifts that you have and what you're doing. Allow yourself to be in a new moment, free of judgment across the board. The question that I remember from yet another discipline is, can you even imagine the world that you would be experiencing if you dropped all of that? We are one with love, and love holds no grievances. When your overriding need is to keep focusing on the good, that's where everything gets lighter. When we begin to think in this way, then this law of mind operates upon our choice. And it begins to move that choice into a new experience for ourselves if we're vigilant about it. When we're thinking spiritually, life receives these thoughts and responds. So it's creative, but it's not selective. People have been doing this spiritual work for years, right? Decades. In this place since the late 40s. And everybody that comes through these teachings, they'll acknowledge the powerful work of these teachings. They know it will work, but as said before, they will forget and they won't stay with it. That's most. People want change, but Dr. Grayson said they won't change their lifestyle. They want change for Sunday, they want change when they tune in for Thursday, they get their boost, they get their connection, but it requires more. There is a desire to move forward in most people, but for whatever reason, people hold on to those old patterns, and they're generally negative, as you know. And they hold on to old resentments and the need to be right, and they just get stuck, right? It's hard for people, a lot of people, to create a new reality, a sustaining new reality that's full of wonder, when they're repeating old thoughts and thinking. If we stay in that old rut of thinking and judging and feeling and functioning, if we stay in that rut, our results will be nil, was Grayson's statement. We might be using great affirmations. We all have them. I can give you a list of wonderful affirmations, but we don't really demonstrate what we're proclaiming because we don't entirely believe the affirmations. Or if we do believe them in the moment, we don't stay with it. Many people conclude that this teaching will not work for them. And I can just tell you, it will work for you if you stay with it, if you stay connected. Willingness, you've heard me say many times in many lectures, willingness is the key, or at least one of the keys. I hear that in every spiritual recovery program, we must be willing to observe ourselves, observe our lives, and have the willingness to make necessary changes because we want something better. We want something better than what we've had. Or we want something different, more expansive from what we've experienced. And it definitely takes more than an affirmation, right? It takes us more than an affirmation. You can't get where you want to go if you're not willing to make some changes. Barker and Grayson both have said that you're simply fooling yourself if you think it's going to happen merely by proclaiming it. The law of creativity is always bringing about something new and fresh, all the time. And it's going to bring forth things better than have ever been here before. So pay attention. You, we are evolving. Each of us have grown a lot already. And you have power to use. You have free will, you have choice, you have a conscious use of mind. And when we're using this mind, when we make a fresh choice out of a new moment, that is the law of mind in action. It's an important line. When you're doing this, when we make a fresh choice out of a new moment, rather than repeating an old idea, right? If you're awake and you're alive in a new moment and you're making a new and fresh choice, then you're using the law of mind and action. Now, there is an affirmative process in all of this, and it's a process of thinking and working on yourself. It was Dr. Grayson who had a series of realizations he taught from, I remember them from years ago, that he said would bring us from freedom to greater freedom. And I spent quite a bit of time with them this week, and I'm going to condense it a little bit for you. these realizations will bring to you what he thought was the freedom that you would really want. And there are stages of awareness. Now, the first one is that we begin to realize that we are an individual self. We have a self and its self-consciousness. We have an identity, and that identity is simply what we are in life and who we are, what we are. And there's more to us than just that identity. The self-consciousness or self-awareness must also be aware that there is a being. There's a being in the universe itself. There's a universal intelligence that expresses through us. So the first realization is that you are a point of awareness, an identity within God, and that you have self-consciousness and self-awareness. The second realization, and we begin to understand in our classes and practice, is to discover the laws which can be consciously used. The second realization is that we need to discover that there is a law in the universe that's always responding. The third realization is that we realize that we have the ability to think for ourselves. Now that's really a big deal, but most people don't understand that. I mean, you are a center of God, activity, power, and intelligence, and you can think for yourself and life will respond. That's really a big thing, though most people don't think about it that way. Most people don't observe this ability to think. They don't know that they have this power. In this teaching, you will learn more and more that you do. If you study Emerson, he talks about it all over the place. And this ability to think and use has profound effects. Our thoughts have a great impact on our bodies, our relationships, our world, healing, everything. So the third realization is to observe yourself. Observe your ability to think and to see the effects of your thoughts upon your body and your relationships and everything. And we realize how thinking changes our body, our form, our circumstances. There's a mind-body relationship, and all of this is part of this action, this activity that's taking place in this third realization, which is that we think. We are thinkers in a world of potential thought. We can think new thoughts and see the effects of that thought operating in our consciousness upon our bodies and our world. And quickly to the fourth realization, it is this thinking process, it's not only that it affects our lives, but it can affect the lives of others. It can change other people's experiences as well. But in our science of freedom here, what we teach, we say that there's a science of mind and that our thoughts also affect others on an unconscious level, not just what we say, not just our expressions, but we have discovered that the effects of thought can change other people's experiences through a law of mind in action. Your thoughts and prayers can be touching people every corner of the world. And why is all this happening? Why is this happening? Leads into Grayson's fifth realization, that is that your thought, my thought, moves in and through a mental medium, right? There's been studies, I don't remember them in my education, where they can track the power of thought and the impact it can have across the world. It knows no time or space. Our thoughts move into a deep unconscious place. And the fifth realization is that our thought can influence our subconscious. It moves into a vastness of unconscious areas of our mind where we all connect. Your thoughts go into an inner world, and an inner world of your subconscious mind, which is the creative mind, the reactive mind, the mind that receives, and the mind that projects. The sixth realization is directly affiliated with this and to consciousness. Here he says we are all consciousness in expression. We all come out of this vast well of consciousness. And that's why we can help each other, because we're all connected deeply in consciousness. We're all connected to this one life from which we all come forth. And that functions in the same way on this plane of relativity, as he called it. And also on a more subtle plane, we all exist as consciousness, and we exist in experience, and we express consciousness all the time. And again, we're all connected. His seventh realization, and he had 9, is that all the physical world is an expression of this one consciousness. This physical world is the outer appearance of collective ideas that underlie it. The world experience is primarily a world of consciousness being expressed, expressing through creative law that project and express. All of mankind is unfolding by means of all of us. So the 7th stage is very important. It shows us that even this physical world is a manifestation of ideas in form, combinations of ideas, forms and actions of consciousness. The 8th realization is that this source, this God that we love and we talk about, we cherish and we praise in many languages and throughout the world, this thing, what he calls the first cause, is expressing itself always, right, through all of us. And it expresses itself in primary ideas of peace, power, love, joy, beauty, and wisdom. These ideas are called primary because they are the fundamental, foundational, perfect patterns for everything that exists. We can have ideas, personally, and our ideas, in a certain sense, are a derivative of these great primary ideas. Now, as we express through us, they might not look like peace, power, love, joy, and beauty. Because the thing about life and what we teach here is the universe can't do for us what it can't do through us. So for us to live the greater life, then we must develop a receptivity to greater peace, power, love, joy, beauty, and wisdom. God can't do for us what God can't do through us. You've all heard that said many times over the years. So we teach the attributes of God, their ideas, wholeness, harmony, peace, joy, and beauty, and all the others. And there's so many words that can be used to describe these attributes. God being an energy and spirit, the source of all that is. So the 8th realization that Dr. Grayson taught is that there is this source of life. It's a vehicle through which we express. We are all living out and an outpicturing of that life. Therefore, in your mind, at the essence of your being is God's mind. In your world of experience, some of your ideas may be distorted and screwed up. I mean, you look at your life and you can see there are areas of challenges, right? Because each of us are living a human experience, a combination of thoughts and feelings. And so in the practice, in our teaching, we step in with affirmative prayer treatment and we learn how to make corrections. And as we correct the dysfunctional areas of our life, like Louise Hay would say, what are you approaching the ocean of life with? Are you receptive? Are you receptive to great good? So in this step, this realization, in this practice, we stop and we bring in the correction. We correct any dysfunctional thinking, distorted thinking. We have the willingness to do that. And we try to get back to what we really know in truth, that source is, and it's in us, and there's a perfect pattern of everything within us. So we say, for example, there's a perfect idea for us, a perfect vision in the universe. And we will say, that is my vision now. And regarding our body or any organ in our body, we'll say there's a perfect vision of me, or say it's my heart. Or there's a perfect idea, and that is my heart now. And you can do that with anything. And we bring in the correction to wherever we have a false idea. It could be a relationship too. It could be anything. And we are bringing in a correction or a perfect idea to the disturbed or the negative idea that's been circulating within us. Our thoughts can be twisted, can be distorted, and as we come to see it, we pay attention on Thursday nights. We always ask, what has it been like being you? And that's really an invitation for you to look at what you've been thinking and make corrections. Our thoughts can be distorted, and we have a teaching that allows us to stop all that and change right now, right? We get things wrong. We've gotten caught up in different things. It could be gossip. It could be negativity. We just could be going through a tough time. And we want to stop. And we want to, what he said, cure it. So you can stop it. And you can cure it. I joke with you weekly. I stop in the name of love. Just wherever you find yourself doing it, release the need and start over. So you can be a today person and not be caught up in what's been circulating within you, all these days before. And you can know all as well, and you can know the truth about yourself and others. This is the work that Grayson said that we must do. This is our work. And the ninth realization is that because of what we are, we have the ability to choose, and we have the ability to choose again and choose again. And it doesn't matter if you've been miserable for all the month of October or September, it doesn't have to be that way starting today. Yesterday ended last night. So we have, in the ninth realization, free will and choice to choose and choose again. And because we have this free will, we can say yes and we can say no. We can say, I don't want this. The peace of God is my one goal. I release the need to go the other way. We can live, he said, we can live without really thinking at all. He says we can live with a lot of prejudice and old ideas, though it's not terribly intelligent. And he said when you're doing that, all you're doing is covering up the wholeness. And the masses of the world may not be thinking, but you can be thinking, and you can be creating a whole new world experience. Doesn't matter that others may be covering up the perfect idea or the essential reality of the greatness that they are. You can engage spiritual thinking, if you will, and that spiritual thinking will dissolve all these areas and will dissolve and erase all of that so that you can see and know the wholeness of yourself and your friends and loved ones. So it was quite a lesson. To wrap it up today, I found something I liked. A little exercise you might try now for a moment. This one can help you when you've been down on yourself or somebody else, like you got really caught up in negativity about yourself or a friend or a loved one. Imagine yourself or whoever it is that you've been down on in any way. Imagine that person or yourself as having a bright halo or light all around you. Think of the person or people. And if it's you, imagine and notice in your mind the halo or the light that is there. And the person that you have been judging or you've had any conflict with, imagine this halo and light surrounding them. Now notice that there's a large sack that's around that person or yourself. Perhaps it's burlap, right? It's thick. And of course, I don't know who you're imagining, whether it's you or someone else, but as you think of this person who is covered, I want you to notice the little rays of light that still come out from these woven bags of burlap or whatever the fabric. There's still this light that comes forward. And maybe it's you, or it's someone else. But it seems as though many of us hide our light, and it's tough for us to see it as it really is in ourselves and in others. When we do our spiritual thinking, when we do our spiritual practice, it is a corrective activity. We begin to realize the truth for ourselves or for another. And when we do this, it's like removing that woven cloth where you can only see a little bit of light that covers most of the light. And when we do our spiritual work, then we can rightly experience ourselves and the others as well. The truth, the curative thoughts that we teach, the words that we use, the affirmative prayers we employ, and remove the blockage or the negative thoughts. Opinions and beliefs that we have been entertaining about people, places, and things, and ourselves. Ideas are flowing through us all the time, and it's easy to get hooked into negativity and gossip. Spiritual knowing in spiritual treatment will dissolve and erase all of this every time. All the negativity and beliefs that we have accepted about ourselves and others. The light and the glory, the beauty of life flows through us as we turn from the stories to our spiritual knowing that all is well with us, our family, our friends. We have powerful affirmations that have been passed down to us. Here is one. I am a perfect action of God and the perfect action of Spirit. I am whole and I am complete. Many people on our broadcast today may not realize that they are a perfect action of God, a perfect action of Spirit, whole and complete. But that is the truth. You can develop this spiritual knowing if you want to, if you stay with the teaching and you plug in and you practice. Ours is a teaching of unfolding freedom that allows us to have peace and to a large extent direct our destiny. It isn't complicated though it might be confusing in the beginning. The approach is a practice. Right here, right now, you can use it. Your willingness is the key. When you're willing to make the outward and inner changes, a new spiritual knowing begins to take over. There will be a quickening. This is a practice of freedom. So enjoy, listen to all that happens within. Stay connected with us. And thank you for being here today.